Hello, everybody. Hey, Tracy, how you doing?
Hey, Julianne.
How are you?
I'm good.
Awesome.
One second.
Carrie, you are on here. Carrie Davis. I thought you weren't going to be able to join us. Oh, no, it's Carrie Kirksey.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. Kids are at school. I'm really good.
Good to hear it. All right. So apologize for the delay and welcome. We are glad that you're here for group coaching, and Tracy, more people will jump on. They always do. Also know that today is the first day of school. So it's really good that we're taping this today because I anticipate a lot of people are going to watch it later on. And so anyway, today our topic is on multiple offers and backups and how to handle those from both the listing side and from a buyer side so that we just are more knowledgeable on how to handle it. And I don't know about you, but we're dealing with that on almost every property that every property that we've been focused on in the last couple of months. We've been in multiple offer situations on both sides. So this is a really important topic. We're excited to have Tracy Quisenberry, one of our top agents in our office and one of the most bubbly personality people that I know. So Tracy, go ahead and take it away. And before she starts, we are taping this. It will be on our quantrain.com. It'll be on there on our YouTube channel as well with everything else. So take it away, Tracy. Oh, one more thing, sorry. At 1 o'clock today, I'll be talking about, all right, you're under contract now, what? All of the ins and outs of what to do once you finally under contract. All right, Tracy, take it away.
Okay, well, I can't, it looks like I can't choose a virtual background, so I apologize. I had to move my office into the guest room.
No worries.
Big room for the nursery, so no judgment on what's behind me.
No judgment at all.
Okay, so like Julianne said, we are definitely in a seller's market below 500. And maybe some areas those numbers change, but definitely below 500, we're in a seller's market. And you know, we're seeing like even under 200, a very, very aggressive, or let's say under 300, a very aggressive seller's market, where we're not just getting 1 or 2 multiple offers, we're getting 10. So it's a great time to focus on how to make your offer strong and how to beat out the other offers. I've had the privilege of beating out many, many offers. So I want to share some tools today to help you guys when you're writing your offers. So, hang on one second. Are you on speaker view, Julianne?
I am on mute. I've muted myself and I will mute everybody else. Why? Are you getting some feedback?
No, it's just, never mind. I was looking at you while I was talking and I was wondering.
Yeah, you can change to either see everybody or to see the speaker view. And then if you need to share your screen, it's at the bottom in the middle.
Yep, got it. Okay, so the first, well, first of all, I'd like to ask by show of hands, how many of you have already been in a multiple offer scenario?
Come on, show your hands. Thank you.
Sherry, how about Janice? Have you been in a multiple offer?
Yes.
Okay. So everybody has some experience with this.
Kelly, I think Janice is the only one that has not been in a multiple offer, right, Janice? Yeah.
Okay, got it. Good. Well, hopefully what I'll share today will help you guys out. So first and foremost, there's some things that you can do in advance before you even take your clients out shopping that can strengthen your buyer's offer. So working with a preferred lender is going to really help you guys out. So either Silverton, Supreme, or if you have another lender that you really like to work with, I recommend that they're local so that, you know, you can pick up the phone, you can text them at 10 o'clock at night, you have that relationship, that customer service. Get your clients pre-qualified with a preferred lender. Now, some the lenders, and I don't know if some are not doing this right now because of just they're just overwhelmed right now with refis, but having your buyer put through underwriting with a TBD on the address. So basically what they do is they're going to put your buyer's file through underwriting. So they'll need all their documents, etc. They just don't have the address yet. So they can give you a complete approval on your buyer's file, not on the house, because we don't have a house, but a complete approval. So instead of getting a pre-qual or a pre-approval, now you're getting a full approval on your buyer. That will definitely strengthen your offer for sure. Now, as I said, some lenders are not doing this right now just because they're inundated with refis and you know, regular contracts. But see if you can talk to your lenders and see if they're still doing a full approval with a TBD on address, so to be determined on the address. So those are a couple of things that you can do before you even take them out to show homes. So you know that your buyer is strong and is financially qualified. Okay, so to me, the next most important thing is calling the listing agent. So after you've shown the home, calling the listing agent and saying, hey, do you have any offers? And he or she is going to say, yeah, we're getting lots of offers right now. You can assume this based on price and condition when you're looking at the houses on MLS. You can assume if it's priced right and it looks really nice, you can assume that there may be some multiple offers going on. But after you show the house, immediately call the listing agent. I mean, obviously your buyers like the house. We're assuming they like the house and want to make an offer. Call the listing agent and ask them, hey, do you have any multiple offers right, or do you have any offers right now? Let's say she says, yes, we've received a couple. My sellers haven't reviewed any yet, but we have received a couple. So this is going to be really important. And by the way, don't text or email. You've got to make the phone call, because the phone call is important because you're building rapport with that listing agent. So now you're not just, right, a text message. You're now a person with a voice. So the most important question to ask is, after you ask if he or she has any offers, okay, so I would say, so I just showed the house to my client and they're very interested in making an offer. What is most important to your sellers? That's a key question. Now, actually, I asked the question, besides price, what's most important to your sellers? Because obviously everyone wants to get top dollar for their house, but they could have some other, another situation, which if you don't ask, you don't know, right? So they could be buying another house and they want to do back-to-back closings, and they want to do back-to-back closings at Campbell and Brannan. You know, so asking those questions. Maybe they need a temporary occupancy agreement after closing for a week or a couple days. There's all different kinds of scenarios. So asking.
Can I ask you a question, Tracy? So I do this on a regular basis, and recently I had something that just really stumped me. We asked that and they said, sure, I'd be glad to, we'll send it to you. Well, I got a list, and basically it said exactly how to fill out the document, including that they were going to hold earnest money, the attorney, the closing. I mean, there was nothing left for us to negotiate on, because it was, this is what we want. I was so dumbfounded. I was like, this isn't your seller's request. This is you to make your life easy. How would you have handled that? Because honestly, I was dumbfounded.
Yeah, I mean, remember that these are suggestions, right? The seller is making suggestions on what they want. That doesn't mean that you have to move forward with those suggestions. So yeah, if you see that they want the closing attorney or their brokerage to hold the earnest money, no way. Our brokerage is going to hold the earnest money. That's a non-negotiable, right? But if they want to close at Campbell and Brannan or another, you know, reputable closing attorney, that's fine. You can always ask the question, is there a reason why you need to close at, I keep using Campbell and Brannan, that was just the first thing, but is there a reason that you need to close at Campbell and Brannan? Because Thomas and Brown is excellent, and I have had just, you know, they're my preferred closing attorney, and they may say, you know what, I'm fine, I've worked with Thomas and Brown before, they're a great closing attorney. So I think asking questions, why do you need this? Why do you need that? But remember that there's suggestions. When I send a highest and best email, like when I'm the listing agent and I send my recommendations for highest and best, the bottom of my email says, please keep in mind that these are only suggestions to make your buyer's offer stand out from the rest. You cannot force someone to use a certain lender, and you can't force someone to use a certain closing attorney. The buyer gets to decide who they want to use. So yeah, I mean, I think they're just suggestions, and you take it like that. They're suggestions, and we'll try to honor as many of those suggestions as possible. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just a little surprised that and it wasn't even like, here are some suggestions. It was like, you will do this, you will do that, you will do that. I was like, I actually was really offended when they sent it over to me. I was like, you obviously aren't going to be easy to work with. And that's unfortunate because that's the way it came across.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. If you don't win the offer, I would, maybe give her some constructive.
Oh, we didn't even put an offer in. It got to the point where the buyer was like, forget this, let's move on. I mean, they could tell. And we just had a conversation with, I asked just out of curiosity, and here are the requests that they gave. And he's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Let's just move on. I didn't like the house that much anyway. So they lost out by being so rigid.
Right. And your buyers didn't really like the house anyway. They weren't that motivated. Right. Okay. So let's go through, I think that is a great question. So let's go through, all right, so we talked about preferred lender, getting your buyer, okay, calling the listing agent, developing rapport, find out what's most important to your sellers, to the sellers. And then let's go through some other things in the purchase and sale agreement that can make your offer stand out from the rest. Well, of course, offering list price or higher, and we're going to talk about escalation clause separately, but offering list price. Let's say your
client, can you talk to us for a minute about how to coach your client about offering more than list price?
Yeah, sure. So let's say, now I always pull comps, right? Because if my clients are coming in with a loan, we need to justify the sales price. So I'm not just going to arbitrarily go 5,000, 10,000 over list price. And if you're having trouble finding comps to support the price, you can always ask the listing agent, what comps did you use to price the house? But the list price the sales price, the offer price has to make sense. You have to have comps to support it. Sometimes what I do is, like if I know that my clients need $5,000 towards closing costs to make this deal work, I'll go $5,000 over the list price so that I'm still netting the seller list price. Does that make sense? But yeah, to your point, you've got to have comps because, your clients are going to want to see, why should I go $5,000 over? Why should I offer more for this house?
Exactly. And if you're looking at it and it just doesn't make any sense, you really can't ask. You're going to create more problems if you happen to get it later on. Or they're not even going to take your deal seriously if the listing agent knows that they're priced right. If they see something above, they know it's going to be a red flag, so they're not going to take you. They'll take somebody else at a lower price point.
Yep. And in fact, I had that same situation in the spring. I had like 10 offers, and the highest offer, I was looking at the price, and I couldn't justify that with comps. So it's not just about the highest price, right? While that's attractive to the sellers, the house has to appraise. So don't come up with some ridiculous number just to get your offer accepted, because like Julianne said, you're going to run into an issue later with an appraisal issue. Now, you could write a special stipulation in the contract that says that, the seller acknowledges that if the house doesn't appraise for 180, the seller, or whatever the price is, the seller agrees to reduce the price to the appraised value. You can already have that written in as a special stip. Whether they'll agree to it or not is another story. But you can always say, hey, we're willing to go up to 180, but if it doesn't appraise, we want you to agree right now that you're going to reduce the price.
And what would the opposite step be in this kind of a market that you would write for a buyer? Because we're getting there.
Oh, that the buyer, yeah, that the buyer will pay the difference in cash between the appraised value and the purchase price.
Right, and that's definitely a conversation that you have to get buy-in with your buyer.
Right, right. So let's say you're under, you offer 180, the appraisal comes back for 175. Your buyer will have to bring $5,000 additional to closing to make up the difference between the appraised value and the sales price. Make sense? I don't recommend that because they're overpaying for the house at that point. And unless they're planning to be there for, you know, a good amount of time to make sure that the values are coming up in that area, I wouldn't advise it.
And I wouldn't either. And yet there are places around the country where that is happening more and more and more. And Atlanta's getting into that point. So part of our mindset is changing it and helping people understand, yes, you're paying above now. And with the market the way that it's going, you will, if you're going to be there long enough, you will get your value back.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. You need to make sure that this is not just a 3 to 5 year purchase, that this is like a 7 to 10 year purchase. Now, some clients, they absolutely love the house. They're going to stay there long term. Then there's nothing wrong with that if they have the cash. Okay, so I told you, you know, list price or higher. Getting that, so if they definitely need contributions towards closing, increasing the sales price so that net is either at the list price or over list price. Okay, so you definitely want to give at least 1% earnest money. Whoever's not giving 1% earnest money, I mean, that's, to me, I mean, while earnest money is not required, 1% now is, I mean, it's standard. But if your buyer can give more earnest money, remember, this is their money that's being held in Keller Williams escrow account, and they're going to get it back at closing. So there's nothing wrong with, if they have the money, giving more earnest money. And I'll tell you, I had a property in Canton. It was a fixer up. It was a total rehab. I listed it for, I think, 100, and I got 15 offers. The 2 highest offers, they were exactly the same. I mean, exactly the same, except one buyer offered $15,000, some crazy amount towards earnest money. And that was the difference. We went with them because they showed that we're going to buy this house. And there was no due diligence. So that was hard cash on the line. So earnest money is definitely, you need to be giving at least 1%, but if the buyer can give more, like 2%, that's going to increase your chances. Okay, so let's talk about due diligence period. Even when you're not in a multiple offer situation, gone are the days of 12 to 14 days due diligence. No one is going to accept that. Some people are still accepting 10 days due diligence, but most listing agents want to see 7 to 8 days due diligence. Now, let's talk about the right to request repairs exhibit. And I'm going to share my screen. Hold on one second. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, okay. Thanks, Julianne. Hold on one second.
I got your chat. Don't worry about it, okay?
Oh, cool. Okay. Okay. So the exhibit, I'm going to share it with you. It's called Property Sold with Right to Request Repairs Exhibit. Share screen. Can everybody see my screen? Can everybody see the exhibit?
On it, then did you hit share again?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have to hit share, right?
There you go. Perfect.
Okay, so this is the F273. So if you want to make your offer, if you need to make your offer really strong, you go in with 0 days due diligence and you use the property sold with right to request repairs exhibit. You attach it as an exhibit to the contract. So basically you're saying, my clients are serious about this house and the only reason they would terminate, so we don't need a due diligence period. Remember, a due diligence period, the buyer can terminate for any reason. By removing the due diligence period, we're now saying we're not going to terminate for any reason. We're going to terminate if your seller doesn't agree to repair certain defects with the house. So please read over this quickly. I mean, carefully. We don't have to do it right now. But basically, you're going to, you still do an amendment to address concerns. And if the seller doesn't agree to do all of the repairs, now keep in mind, this has to be defects with the property. It cannot be cosmetic issues or anything like that. It has to be defects with the property. So something that the inspector finds in the inspection report. So read over this carefully. The property sold with right to request repairs. I typically do the number 1, buyers shall have the right to request the seller to repair or replace any defects. So within, I typically do, this is where you could do like 8 days, 10 days from the binding agreement date. And then the next one, number 2, the defect resolution period. Remember, everything's from the binding agreement date. So your first number should be, let's say, 8 days. Your second number is from the binding agreement date. So the second number has to be like 10 days. Does that make sense? So read over this carefully. You have to provide an inspection report from a reputable inspector, and it defines what defects are. To make sure that you understand. Now, let's say, I mean, some buyers don't feel comfortable using this. They don't feel comfortable removing the due diligence period. That's where you have to have a conversation to really coach your client. If this is definitely absolutely the house that you want, and there's no reason other than defects with the house that you would terminate, this offers you just as much protection. Because what we do is we're literally going to put, let's say you want to sabotage the deal, right? You could put every single thing in the inspection report. And now if the seller says, fine, we'll fix everything, then you have to move forward. But that's a way that you could always sabotage the deal.
And to your point, Tracy, I mean, it's supposed to be only defects, but defects are in a way subjective. And so I've lost on a right to repairs or had it terminate because they were asking for things they thought were defects, and they're not. They're just normal wear and tear, not a defect. So I think the most important thing for us to understand is most agents don't even understand what this is, and they're afraid of it. So you almost have to coach the other side on why it's of value to them.
Yeah.
To use this versus a due diligence.
I have definitely had in a multiple offer, I've had an agent, I've had agents tell me they don't understand the escalation clause, so they don't want me to use it. I've had agents not want me to use the right to request repairs because they don't understand it. So yeah, so there is a bit of coaching that is involved with the other agent, with the listing agent. And some listing agents, they just want to keep everything simple. Well, to me, this is really simple. But just know that if you use this, you may have an agent on the other side of the table that doesn't understand, and so he or she won't advise their client to accept your offer. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share. You guys, please read over that carefully so that when you're in a multiple offer, you can coach your client to understand it. Okay, so that's the due diligence period. Let me go back to my list. Does that make sense to everybody? So if you're going to do a regular due diligence period, keep your days short, like 7 or 8 days. Look, if you need more time to negotiate, that's plenty of time to get an inspection. If you need more time to go back and forth and negotiate, you can always extend the due diligence period by a day or two. But at least you're putting your best foot forward.
And to your point, Tracy, with the shorter due diligence, I mean, I've lost out on a 7-day due diligence because somebody put 5. So the shorter that you can make it, the better. In order to do that, though, you have to, as a buyer's agent, have to be really smart and line up your inspector ahead of time. Right? Exactly. So set an appointment that can be canceled, but set up that appointment so the minute that you go binding, you've got, so that you don't play around with those days. Because if you're doing that short a time frame, chances are they're not going to want to extend because they want to either move forward or go on to the next person.
Yeah, that's true. I've definitely seen 5-day due diligence period. So like Julianne said, if you're going to do a 5-day, make sure to set up your inspection ahead of time. Okay, financing and appraisal contingencies. So these are in the in one of the loan exhibits. Keep these contingency days short. So I would have a conversation. These are lender numbers, right? So have a conversation with the lender. Say, look, I have a feeling this is going to be a multiple offer, or hey, I've been told it's a multiple offer. How aggressive can I get with the financing and appraisal days? I have lenders that can do financing in 12 to 15 days, get a conditional loan approval. Most people do 21 days for appraisal, but if you order your appraisal as soon as you go under contract, then you should be able to get it back before 21 days. The reason people are putting 21 days for financing and appraisal is because they're waiting until the due diligence period is over to order the appraisal, which is smart, and that's what I do all the time. But if you know you're in a multiple offer and you want to keep those contingencies short, then find out how long you have to order the appraisal. Okay, of course, closing, you want to close in 30 days or less. Again, talk to the lender about how aggressive you can get with the closing. Now, remember, going back to that conversation that we're having with the listing agent, her clients may need 45 days to close, right? So that's why that conversation is important from the beginning. Because if you put in a closing date of 30 days or less, they may need more. So that's just an additional point to counter later. So have that conversation first. If she says, hey, 30 days is fine, but we're going to need a temporary occupancy agreement for a week, you know that moving forward. I mean, you know that when you're writing the offer. Okay, so in the FHA, if you're going in with an FHA loan, keep the FHA required repairs. There's a dollar amount that the seller needs to pay. And if there are FHA required repairs, keep that dollar amount low. Don't go in with like $1,000. I typically do like $250 for that cap of FHA required repairs. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
You can always take yourself off mute if you want to ask a question. Okay. I like to write clean offers. So in the special stipulations, if you know you're going in with in a multiple offer, don't ask for a termite letter, don't ask for a termite bond, don't ask for a home warranty, keep it clean. In regards to the termite situation, during your inspection, you'll have a termite inspection. I know like with Amerispec and other companies, they partner with Arrow and other companies to offer complimentary termite inspections. But also, I mean, if you pick up the phone, all companies, Northwest, Bug Out, they all offer free termite inspections. If you find an active infestation, you can always ask for the bond later. So you still have that protection in case there are termites. You just don't want to ask for it in advance. Okay, so that's it off this list. I made myself a list. Okay, so shorter finance appraisal. Okay, we talked about that. Shorter number of days due diligence. Oh, here's one that no one ever thinks about. Submitting your offer as is, meaning that you still have the right to an inspection, but you're not going to ask for any repairs.
Oh, I had never thought about that.
No, yeah.
But that's really, you really got to talk your client into that.
Yeah, I know. This will only work if you have the kind of buyer that is very handy. Yeah, I'll repeat it. So submit it, and this would be in the special stipulations section. You would include buyer still has the right to an inspection, but waives the right to requesting repairs.
That's a really good one, Tracy.
It's pretty strong, but you have to, so this is the kind of thing you either have, you know, someone in your buyers in construction, your buyer feels comfortable with the house. When they've gone through the house, they feel comfortable. Now remember, in this situation, you're not gonna, you have to put in a due diligence period. You cannot use the right to request repairs. You still have the right to terminate. So you get the inspection. Let's say there's crazy, there's just a lot of stuff. You can always terminate.
Right.
Right? So
I would also think I would not want to do that on a house that didn't have a seller's disclosure.
I agree.
Right?
But either way, you're getting a home inspection. So if you're okay losing that money on the home inspection, it's pretty strong. Now, here's a caveat to that. If you say that you're not going to ask for repairs, you can always ask for money in lieu of repairs. Does that make sense? So let's say you waive the right to request repairs. You find a bunch of stuff. Let's say it's $1,000 worth of repairs that are needed. So you'll just ask the seller for $1,000 towards closing costs or a price reduction on the house. So see, you're not asking for repairs. Now it's just money. Make sense?
Yeah. We talk for a second. I think most people know this, but let's just talk this through. What's the difference between asking for closing costs or money from the seller versus reducing the sales price?
Okay, so so I always like to ask for money towards funds towards closing costs, because for the seller it's the same, right? They're netting, if it's $1,000 contributions or $1,000 off the price of the home, they're netting the same. But with asking for closing costs, that's money that your cash that your buyer doesn't have to bring to closing. So it's much better for your client. So let's say we're asking for $1,000 towards closing costs. That's $1,000 now that your buyer can use to make the repairs. Whereas when it comes up, the price of the house, really, I mean, how that affects the mortgage, maybe like $20 a month. So really it's better to get the cash. It's better to get the closing costs than reduce the house. Unless you're in a situation where your buyer is really squeezing by on that $125,000 and a price reduction would really help them out for their monthly payment.
Or if you've asked for, you've already got your maximum closing costs and you've got nowhere else to put it.
That's true, yeah. So remember, if you're coming in with a conventional loan, the seller can only give you 3% towards closing costs. And with an FHA loan, it's 6% towards closing costs. So if you've already maxed out closing costs, like you've already asked for everything you can, either 3 or 6%, then you do need to do a price reduction. But I'm thinking in a multiple offer situation, we're not coming in asking for the max closing cost unless we're increasing the sales price. Make sense? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again and we're going to talk about escalation clauses. Screen 2, share. All right, can you see it? Everybody see the escalation clause?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, good. Okay, so this would go in your special stipulations section of the contract. So basically you're saying, well, you guys can read it. Here, let me zoom it. In the event that the seller receives other offers, which result in the net proceeds, I always make sure it's net, because remember, 170, let's say someone goes to 180, but they're asking for 5K towards closing costs, that's a net offer of 175. Then if they're asking for a termite bond and a home warranty, you have to subtract those numbers. So we're saying the net proceeds of the sale are equal to or greater than the net proceeds of the sale under your buyer's offer. Then the sales price in this offer shall automatically increase by a certain dollar amount. I like to do $1,000. I've recently had one at 500. I think 1,000 is just, it's a little more incentive.
I agree. $500 is not that big a deal.
So I would do 1,000. You can certainly do more. That number you can play with. So your buyer is willing to increase their offer to $1,000 over the highest competing offer. And there's a cap, right? So the sales price under this offer shall not exceed whatever. So let's say you come in with an offer of $325, but then in your escalation clause, you're saying we're going to go $1,000 over the highest offer with a cap of $350. That's the most my buyer is willing to pay for this house. Now, you don't have to, you can take that line out. You don't have to put in a cap.
Oh, you want to put a cap, because with these crazy agents out there that are putting offers in, not thinking about appraisal, you definitely want to put a cap of what you think is going to appraise that.
Yeah, that's true. So I would have a cap. You are asking for the seller to provide you with a copy of the highest offer, the offer that you are beating out, within 24 hours, the binding agreement date, like, so 24 hours that you go under contract with them. Or if he or she doesn't give that to you, then the price goes back to the original offer.
The only thing that mine has that yours doesn't, Tracy, is I put a deadline of acceptable offers that we're competing against.
A deadline.
So that any offers that they've received in a multiple offer situation, any offers that they've received by this date, that we will compete against those. Right? Because under this one, you could literally go under contract and they could get a competing offer afterwards and try to finagle it, right?
That's good. Yeah, that's great. So is the deadline, like if the agent calls for highest and best, is that the deadline you use?
Usually that's the deadline I use. Yeah. So that it's not after the fact. Huh?
What if the agent doesn't call for highest and best?
Then I put in a deadline of usually when we're making our offer, or within a 24-hour period. Usually it depends, but I'll stick it in there so that they know that. And I especially do it like for brand new listings. I'll put it in, like if we're putting an offer in really soon after it's gone live, I don't want to compete against stuff that's going. So I'll let the agent know, look, we're willing to compete against these, but we're not going to wait all weekend long to see for highest and best. We're offering this and we'll match or beat anything for now. Does that make sense?
So what is, how do you word the deadline?
Hold on. Mine is stated. Hold on a second. I'll find it, and you keep going, and I'll find it, and then I can open it up for you guys. Okay.
So you know, I've seen there's lots of different versions of the escalation clause. You know, when I send the email to the listing, when I send the offer to the listing agent, I make sure to point out we have used an escalation clause in the contract. Please, you know, please share this, or please, you know, bring your seller's attention to this, because people don't read. And some people don't understand the escalation clause and don't feel comfortable with it. So you need to point it out. I would point it out in your email, and make sure that that listing agent understands it. Okay. So again, you're going to put the escalation clause in the special stipulation section.
There's my escalation clause for everybody.
Are you going to share it? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it's in the chat.
Perfect. Okay. Now this is where you could also include, you know, if the house doesn't appraise at 350. So in this situation, our cap was 350. If the house doesn't appraise at 350, the buyer is willing to pay the difference between the appraised value and the sales, you know, and the list, sales price. Or you could do the opposite, which we talked about earlier. Okay, so I want to share one more thing with you guys on my screen. Give me 1 second to pull it up. Okay, what I always think is a nice touch is a personal letter to the seller. Give me 1 second. Okay, share screen. Share. Okay. So this is a letter that I had my clients write. It was several years ago. I always put, I'll give my clients, I'll send them examples of a personal letter, and I'll let them write their own, but then I'll always go back and edit it because I don't want them to overshare. It shouldn't be longer than 1 page, but I don't want them to share like financial things, or I don't want them to share things that are too personal. So I'll always let them do a draft, and then I'll go in and tweak it. Definitely, you can get that, you know who the seller is off the tax records or the disclosures. I mean, you know who this person is. It makes me chuckle a little bit when people just put dear homeowner, because you know who the seller is. It's just another little personal touch. Like if someone called you dear realtor versus dear Tracy, it has a psychological effect. So I also had my clients include a little picture of their family. They talked about just themselves for a little bit, that it's husband, wife, they have a kid and 2 dogs, and then what they liked about the house. Talk about, you know, if there's renovations to the house, how much they love the renovations, how they can really picture their life here. They've been looking for this type of home, and get very specific with, oh, we love the sunroom is perfect for this, or my husband works from home, so the office is great. You know, getting not personal into their life, but personal into this is why we love this home. It really, I mean, nowadays everyone's doing personal letters, but there was a time when not everybody was doing personal letters. Now, let's say a corporation owns the house, or an investor owns the house. It's not an actual homeowner. I would still write the letter. I have won on a fixer-upper. I have won 15 or something offers. I won because of the letter, because the listing agent was touched. So don't assume just because it's, you know, a corporation that there's not a human being on the other side.
Right. I'll tell you, one of the best letters that I ever saw, one of my clients wrote, and it wasn't the letter that got them. It was the picture at the bottom. They had 2 suitcases and they put their kids in the suitcases with the lids. And at the bottom, it said, "We're packed and ready to go." And it was just that picture. It was so freaking adorable. Everyone was just like, oh, I mean, it was so freaking cute.
And this is something that you can do in advance. If you know that you're going into a multiple offer, have your clients write a letter, and then they can fill, you know, they write their personal stuff, and then we can fill in the details about the property later. That way, you know, because you're writing an offer quickly, so that way you can execute quickly. But I always edit my clients. I always send them a Word document and request a Word document back, because you may want to edit some of the things that they're saying, especially if they're not good writers. Okay. So we got the personal letter. We talked about, you know, keeping the offer clean, so not asking for a lot of things. I just had a multiple, I was the buyer's agent, and I knew that there was one other offer on the table, but I did include a home warranty because the systems were old, and that was fine. I mean, the listing agent and I had a conversation in advance. There's 4 HVAC units in the house, so I wanted to protect my client, and I didn't think that was that big a deal. It was only like, I was only asking for, I don't know, 500, 600 bucks. So I was okay with that. But when you start loading it up with lots, you know, we've got the termite bond and the home warranty, and we want this and this and this, then it starts getting to be a little too much. But there's nothing wrong if you want to ask for, if you know, like the systems are old, you can ask for home warranty in advance, but you can always ask for it during due diligence. So does anybody have, I'm going to open it up to you guys, unless, Julianne, did you have anything else to add? Oh, you know, one thing that I do in a multiple offer situation is I leave the time limit of the offer blank. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you do this, Julianne, but because I know they need time to review it, and I don't want to go back and adjust the date and this and that and do an amendment, I just leave the time limit off.
Well, I don't, because if you leave it off, then it's in perpetuity. It's just out there. So I definitely do it, but I try to leave it a little bit longer time frame so that they know that we are still on the books, as it were. Yeah.
So put maybe a 48-hour timeline instead of like a 20.
Or if you know that you're going to wait through the weekend, you know, 3 days, 4 days, whatever it's going to be, but within that time frame.
Okay, yeah.
How about backup offers? So you've got a multiple offer, you've gotten it, it's gone under contract, and in either situation, either you're the listing agent and you've got it under contract, but you had all these other offers, or you're a buyer, they really love this property, you lost. What do you do? Is there such a thing as a backup offer, and how do you make sure that it's legit?
Yeah, sure. So if the listing agent sends me the dreaded email, thank you for your client's offer, but my sellers are moving forward with another offer, I'll immediately either call or reply to the email and say, are your sellers taking backup offers? A backup offer is a fully negotiated offer. There is an exhibit to the contract that you need to put in, so you need to do a little bit more work. It's called backup. What is it? Backup contingency, something or other. It's a backup offer exhibit, and you just give them, if basically it's saying that if this offer doesn't become first place by this day, and I usually do like 11 days, 10 days, 11 days, then the offer's off the table. But yeah, a backup offer is great. Some listing agents, they don't want to do double the work, because you have to negotiate 2 contracts. Some listing agents will just say, hey, we have 10 days due diligence. you know, I'll follow up with you if anything happens, or you can follow up with me.
And they never do. And they never follow up with you. They just put it back on the market, right? So you have to, that's the trick with that.
I've never had that happen to me. I've never had.
I have, where it goes back on the market and they don't reach out to anybody before that was in there, and start all over again, which is crazy. But so I don't understand why somebody wouldn't want to have a backup offer, because it puts it automatically in first place if the other one falls through.
Exactly. So here's what you can do. If the listing agent, because you can't force someone to take your backup offer, right? If they don't want to fool with a backup offer, ask how many days due diligence does your current offer have? And then you follow up with them consistently. Mm-hmm. So if she says we have 7 days, and
so the question that Kelly had, and this is important, if you're doing a backup offer, a special stip that I do write in my contract is all parties agree and acknowledge that the earnest money, the time limit on the earnest money begins once we become primary. That way,
you really need to write that in, because
yes, because if you go under contract, because it says the earnest money, if you go under contract without that special stip, the earnest money is due within whatever time frame you have.
Because see, I thought that you didn't technically have a binding agreement date until you become first place.
No, it is binding. That's what's so cool about it. It is a binding agreement, okay, with everything set and ready to go as soon as you become first. Well, just like your due diligence doesn't start, it says that in the backup office that your due diligence doesn't start to become first, but the earnest money, it does not say that. So you have to write it into the special stip under the purchase and sale.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Great. Thanks for pointing that out. So yeah, so the backup offer, you have to revise the purchase and sale agreement to include that exhibit, and then include the special stipulation that Julianne just said about the earnest money not being due until the offer becomes primary. And then all parties can sign, and you do have a binding agreement. So that's the backup offer. If the listing agent says that they don't want to do it, or the seller's not interested at this time, then just follow up with the listing agent every few days.
I personally think that most agents don't even realize that there's a backup offer exhibit and that they can do that formally. Honestly, I don't think they know it.
Oh God, it's really sad.
It's really sad. It really is. We just submitted a backup offer and the agent was like, oh, well, we'll contact you. I was like, well, this is a formal offer that you need to respond to. We're supposed to negotiate this. Oh, really? Seriously. Didn't have a clue.
Wow. Well, that's really sad. So make sure that when you ask the question, are you accepting backup offers, they understand what that means.
Yes.
Because I guess in Julianne's case, she didn't.
Yep.
So I think, yeah, I mean, backup offers are great. I've had my backup offer has gotten accepted a couple times, and it's an awesome feeling, because if that wasn't in place, who knows, they put it back on the market, or, you know, they go back to another person. So yeah, so it's great. So does anybody have any questions about multiple offers, how to strengthen their offer, anything that we talked about?
On the backup offer, can you still terminate that in case your buyer finds another house?
Absolutely.
In the normal way they would normally terminate?
Yep. You would you use TNR or terminate?
Yes, you have to, because it's a binding contract. You have to use TNR.
Absolutely. And I would keep shopping. I wouldn't sit around and wait.
Right.
Sure.
Keep shopping.
And then on the request for repairs, you said defects. What are kind of things that people normally ask for? I mean, are they asking for like GFCI outlets to be changed? I mean, to me, that's not a defect. That's grandfathered in.
again, it's all subjective.
Okay.
That's a great question about GFCI.
I hate that.
Because it's really not a defect. It's just bringing it up to code. That's not a defect. A defect
Right.
is the defect of the property, right?
Grandfather
Or
in.
the product.
Yeah.
So even older units, it's not considered a defect.
Yep. So do yourself a favor, find that right to request repairs exhibit and read over it very, very carefully. And if you have any specific questions, I would ask Sherry or Julianne or Authorine, just so you really, really understand what a defect is. But I've never thought about the GFCI not being a defect. You're absolutely right. Yeah, so just read through that because it goes over exactly what a defect is. No,
Other questions?
I'm not using I'm not using a lot of right to request repairs anymore. I did like a couple years ago, but I just go in with a short due diligence period. It's like people don't want to mess with right to request repairs, which is a shame.
Yeah, they don't understand it, so they don't like to use it, which is crazy because back in the day, I understand that there was no due diligence. It was a right to repair. And
Right.
Then it switched and everybody was so confused. But really it was because it was a buyer's market and there were so many choices out there that they wanted to be able to, the option of being able to always look for something better out there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's amazing how things change with the market, right?
So in closing, I think the most important thing, if you didn't hear anything that I said today, that phone call to the listing agent is the most important thing that you can do. And asking, besides price, what is most important to your sellers? And if you say, just price. Price is really important. Other than that, we don't have any specifics. You still want to write a strong offer.
So what do you do in the case where some of those agents will not take your call and they just say, just submit your offer? You just go for it.
Yeah. You can't force someone to talk to you.
Nope. And some of them just won't talk to you.
Yep.
No.
In that case, you can always text or email them, but still be writing the offer, right? But you could always text or email them if they prefer to correspond that way. But I would still don't let it delay you. Still be working on the offer.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You guys feel a little bit like you have some arsenal now? You got your tool, what's it?
Tool belt.
With the well, I wish you guys the best of luck.
Awesome. Tracy, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
we know that we can go out there and win those deals. So don't give up. There's ways to make it as clean as possible. So have fun.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Trace.
You're welcome.